Hi there, how you doing? Ian Dixon here. Interesting topic today really. I'm going to talk about a positive mental attitude and some of my ways of thinking and my approach to the importance of having the right mindset and the right attitude and where all of that came from, because I've not always been that way. Certainly back in my corporate days, I struggled, I have to say, with keeping positive and keeping a good positive mental attitude. And as a business owner, it's critical, having the right mindset and approach to your work. And this concept of having a PMA, positive mental attitude, is really, really important. But I thought I'd share with you just a little bit of the backstory that sits behind that. So, back in 2004, I got made redundant from a very high profile job. It was without a doubt the worst surprise party I'd ever been to. I had no idea it was coming. It was a complete surprise to me. I'm normally quite switched on, and when something's not right, most of us have a sense that something is coming or something that doesn't appear to be right. But I had no idea I was going to be made redundant that day. And it was a tough time, and I've got to say, certainly for a good few weeks after being very low and essentially being destroyed for a period of time from being made redundant from my corporate job, I had some revelations, some profound, real what I call shifts in attitude and approach and ways of thinking. And I'm going to use a phrase that I think I stole from a lovely lady whose name is Taz Thornton, which is basically I learned how to flip the negative. And I'm now somebody that very rarely gets low or feels unhappy. On the contrary, one of the things that I've learned is that two of the most powerful words that you could ever engage with is that you choose, and your attitude and your approach and your outlook, your mood, how happy you are, they're all a choice. I'm not suggesting for a minute that it's not appropriate to feel down or to feel unhappy about something or angry or whatever it might be, but just recognize it's ultimately a choice. And nobody ever does it to you. It's a choice that you're making. And once these cogs started to turn in my head, it just became so much more apparent that I was sort of self-destructing and doing things to myself that were really not serving me very well at all. And to go back to that period in 2004 when I got made redundant, and I just felt like everybody owed me something, and I was absolutely in what I call victim mindset. It was just like, it wasn't my fault. And actually, there's been so many occurrences since that time where I reflect back on how I changed my view on this victim mindset. So, and I use an equation, or essentially an equation, which is E equals O, and that essentially means event equals outcome. And what I did with that equation is I put in an R, plus R. So event plus R, which is response, equals outcome. So essentially what we're doing is I don't have any control over an event, but what I do have control over is how I respond. And as a consequence of that, I have an opportunity to change the outcome. So without exception, since I got my head around that whole concept, and both since then and when I look back retrospectively, there have been probably 4 or 5 key life-changing events in my life where I didn't truly have control over the event, but what I did have control over was my response to that event and how that in turn altered the outcome. And without exception, every single one of those occurrences, those events, that I wouldn't have chosen to do. That, you know, that's the long and short of it. I wouldn't have chosen to have left my job. And there's been a few others along the way that I wouldn't have chosen to do. Without exception, every single one of those events where I've got my head around how I've responded has given me a better outcome. So, you know, back in 2004, as I was leaving the building when I had my exit interview, you know, basically been handed the envelope to say your services are no longer required. If you'd have said to me back then, this is the best thing that's ever happened to you, I probably would have punched you on the nose. But within a few weeks of getting my head around the opportunity that had been presented to me, aged 44 as I was back then, was profound. And it was, rather than the worst day that had ever happened, it was actually the best day. And, you know, to the extent that I wouldn't be sat here talking to you now if I hadn't been made redundant in 2004 and grasped that opportunity and got my head around the approach to it. So I want to go back to the whole flip the negative thing. So one of the ways in which and I'm coining somebody else's phrase, but it's such a great way to, it's such great terminology for something that I've continued to do since I got my head around this whole you choose thing, is that occasionally something might happen to me that it disrupts or was unexpected, that ultimately is a negative event, you know, something that has upset me, made me unhappy, or you know, been unfair, that I didn't really have any control over. And instead of getting angry, aggrieved, upset, or down, what I do is I find a way to then go and do something and use that as an excuse to go and do something completely random that is positive, upbeat, and in somebody else's interest or benefit. And this is this whole concept of flipping the negative. So something negative that happens over here, I'll absolutely just get straight up and go and do something positive over here for myself. So because it's impossible not to get off on the whole activity of doing something good, positive, and nice for somebody else, which bizarrely has been triggered by the negative and bad thing that's happened over here. So it's such a great way of thinking. It's been a complete revelation for me, life-changing for me. And those that know me, those that watch this that know me will know, you know, I'm an upbeat guy. And the reason why I'm an upbeat guy is because why would I choose to be anything else? It is a skill that you can learn. I never used to always be like this. Definitely something had, you know, it may have been actually that profound day that when I got made redundant, and I really was about as low as any human being could go. And 14 years on, this is the result of, or 15 years on, this is the result of that bounce, you know. In fact, we're nearly 16 years on, but, you know, this is the result of the bounce of that day. So, and long may it continue. So really the primary reason to come on today and to share with you, because it is absolutely business related, is that being a business owner is bloody tough, and it's hard work, and that's why so few people are crazy enough to take on this mantle of being a business owner. And so much of it, you know, I've learned over the last 15 years, so much of it when I'm working with business owners centers around how they're thinking and where their mindset is at, and whether or not they have this PMA, this positive mental attitude to their work. So I just thought I'd give you a bit of an insight and a bit of a sort of a look inside on maybe just a little bit of how and why I think the way that I do. Surrounding yourself with positive, upbeat people is another great way to, you know, get yourself into a good space. Listening and watching to things like this, of course, helps too. But ultimately, I would say the simplest trick and the most important message I could give you are those two words, is that ultimately it's a choice that you're making. And when you go into excuse, blame, or denial, you're in victim mode. and actually taking control and responding differently to an event that's occurred to you gives you a different outcome. So there you go. I hope you found that useful. A little bit different today, but still very much business related, because so much of this is around your mindset and attitude. Please do help me out and hit the subscribe button. That would be just wonderful, and maybe press the bell, because that'll tell you when new videos are coming up. Yeah, and you know, get that PMA going, positive mental attitude. Be happy, make a choice. Don't be a victim. Go flip the negative, and do something good for somebody. You can't fail to get off on it. It's a fab thing to do. So there you go. We look forward to catching up with you on the next video, but I'm going to say bye for now.